I want you to picture something with me. It's a Thursday afternoon in late May. The goldfinches are dancing around the bird feeders my late husband built 20 years ago. The sun is warm on my back porch, and I'm holding a cup of coffee that's gone cold because I forgot to drink it. My phone rings. It's my daughter. And the words that come out of her mouth will change everything I thought I knew about my own family. Mom, we need to talk. We've already decided. You're moving into assisted living next week. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, watching those little yellow birds flutter and land, and something inside me went very, very still. Not sad, not angry, just still. Like my body knew before my brain did that everything was about to change. I heard myself say, calm as anything, "You skipped one step." There was a pause, then a sigh. That impatient sigh she'd been giving me more and more lately. "What step, Mom?" I didn't answer right away. Because my doctor had told me something 3 weeks earlier that my daughter didn't know. Something that changed everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to take a breath with me. Just one deep breath. And if you don't mind, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time it is there. It brings me so much comfort to know that women all over the world are listening to this. That I'm not alone in what I went through. That maybe, just maybe, my story can help someone else trust her own instincts before it's too late. And if stories like this speak to your heart, please subscribe to Jessica Stories Vault. We're all walking this road together, and none of us should have to walk it alone. Now, let me tell you who I am and how I got here. My name is Martha, and I'm 70 years old. I've lived in the same pale yellow farmhouse for 47 years. My husband Robert carried me across that threshold when I was 23 years old, blushing and full of dreams. He worked this land with his own 2 hands until the day his heart gave out 11 years ago. I've been alone ever since, but I've never felt lonely. Not really. This house knows me. Every creak in the floorboards, every draft that slips through the windows in January, every stubborn cabinet door that needs a little lift before it'll close. I know this place like I know my own heartbeat. 3 acres of Tennessee countryside, bird feeders that Robert built from cedar. A vegetable garden I still tend every spring. And quiet. Beautiful, peaceful quiet. I raised 2 children here. My son Daniel lives 4 hours away in Nashville now. He's got a wife and 2 teenage boys, and we don't see each other as much as I'd like. But when we talk on the phone, it's easy, comfortable. He still calls me Mama in that soft way he's had since he was a little boy. And then there's Carolyn, my daughter. She lives just 45 minutes away, close enough to visit on weekends, close enough to bring the grandchildren by for Sunday dinners. For years, she was the one who checked on me, the one who drove me to doctor's appointments when my old Buick was acting up, the one who called just to chat. I thought we were close. I thought I knew her. But something had shifted in the past 2 years. Something I couldn't quite name, but I could feel it. Like a draft you can't find the source of, but you know the cold is getting in somehow. The visits got shorter. The phone calls became less about how I was doing and more about logistics. About the house. About the land. How much property do you really need, Mom? Have you ever thought about selling a parcel? Wouldn't you be more comfortable somewhere smaller? I brushed it off every time. Laughed gently and told her I was managing just fine. But the questions kept coming. And there was something in her eyes when she looked around my kitchen. Something I didn't recognize. Something that made the hair on my arms stand up, though I told myself I was being foolish. She's my daughter. She loves me. She's just worried. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. I didn't know yet that her husband Greg had lost his job 18 months earlier. I didn't know that they'd been struggling, that the bills were piling up, that they'd started looking at my 3 acres with different eyes. I didn't know that my daughter had started lying about me, to my son, to my neighbors, to anyone who would listen. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that 3 months before that phone call, I had fallen in my kitchen. It wasn't serious. I slipped on a wet spot by the sink, landed hard on my hip, bruised it pretty good. I was sore for a couple weeks, but nothing was broken. Nothing was wrong. I made the mistake of mentioning it to Carolyn, and that's when everything accelerated. Within a week, she showed up at my door with a folder full of glossy brochures. Assisted living facilities, places called Sunrise Meadows and Golden Years Village, with smiling elderly people on the covers and promises of worry-free living. I remember standing in my own kitchen, looking at those brochures, and feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't concern, this was a campaign. But I didn't say that. I smiled and thanked her and said I'd think about it. And when she left with tight lips and a curt goodbye, I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at those brochures for a long time. That's when I noticed something. On the back of one brochure, someone had written numbers in pencil. Calculations, monthly costs subtracted from a larger number. A number that looked an awful lot like what my property might be worth. My daughter's handwriting. My hand started shaking, and for the first time in my life, I felt afraid of my own child. Now I want to stop here for just a moment, because I know some of you watching might be thinking, she's overreacting. Her daughter was just trying to help. Those calculations could mean anything. And you might be right. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe the best of her so badly that it hurt. But here's the thing I've learned in 70 years of living. Your gut knows things before your head does. Your body feels the truth before your mind can accept it. And my gut was screaming. So I did something I'd never done before. I called my doctor. Not about my hip, which was healing fine, but about everything else. I told her I wanted a full checkup, blood work, cognitive test, everything. I needed to know if I was really declining or if someone wanted me to believe I was. Dr. Patricia Holloway has been my physician for 15 years. She's a no-nonsense woman with reading glasses she's always pushing up her nose, and a way of looking at you that makes you feel seen. She ran every test, and when the results came back, she sat across from me in her office and said something I'll never forget. "Martha, you're in remarkable health. The dizziness you mentioned? It's a medication interaction, easily fixed. Your blood pressure is excellent. Your cognitive function is stronger than most patients 20 years younger than you." She paused and looked at me over those reading glasses. "There's no medical reason you can't live independently for many more years. As long as you want to." I felt tears prick my eyes. Relief, yes, but something else too. Validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't confused. I wasn't declining. Someone just wanted me to think I was. Dr. Holloway must have seen something in my face because she did something unusual. She reached into her desk and pulled out a business card. "I'm going to give you a referral," she said, "to an elder law attorney, a woman named Sandra Chen. She specializes in protecting seniors from situations." She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. "I'm not saying anything is happening," she continued gently, "but I've seen too many cases where healthy patients were pushed into decisions they didn't want to make. Knowledge is power, Martha. You deserve to understand your rights." I took that card and tucked it into my purse. And for 3 weeks, I did nothing with it because I still wanted to believe the best of my daughter. I still wanted to believe that Carolyn's pushiness was just anxiety, just love expressed badly, just a reaction to seeing her mother on a floor with a bruised hip. I wanted to believe we could work this out, like family. Then came that Thursday phone call. "We've already decided. You're moving into assisted living next week." And I knew. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about concern for my well-being. It was about something else entirely. That night, after I hung up the phone, I sat on my back porch until the sun went down and the stars came out. I thought about Robert, about how he'd worked this land his whole life, about how he'd promised me, the night before he died, that I'd always have a home here. I thought about my children, about pushing them on the tire swing that used to hang from the old oak tree, about birthday parties in this kitchen, about Christmases and Thanksgivings and 1,000 ordinary days. I thought about the woman I used to be, young and trusting and so sure that love would always be enough. And I thought about the woman I needed to become now. I went inside. I found Sandra Chen's business card in my purse, and I picked up the phone. Because my daughter had skipped a step. She'd made a decision about my life without asking me, without consulting my doctor, without any legal right to do so. She'd forgotten that I was still here, still sharp, still capable of fighting for myself. And what I was about to discover would break my heart in ways I never imagined. But it would also save my life. The morning after that phone call, I woke up before dawn. I hadn't slept well. My mind kept turning over Carolyn's words, her tone, that impatient sigh. And underneath it all, a question I couldn't shake. How long had this been coming? I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the sky turn pink through the window over the sink. The same window I'd looked through for 47 years. The same view Robert and I had shared every morning of our married life. I wasn't ready to lose this. I wasn't ready to be put somewhere. But more than that, I wasn't ready to believe that my own daughter had become someone I didn't recognize. At 8 o'clock sharp, I called the number on Sandra Chen's business card. Her receptionist was kind, with a warm voice that reminded me of my sister who passed 5 years ago. When I explained why I was calling, she didn't ask a lot of questions. She just said, "Miss Chen has an opening this afternoon at 2. Can you make it?" I said yes. Then I got dressed, did my hair and makeup the way I always do when I'm going somewhere important, and drove myself the 35 minutes to Sandra's office in the next town over. The whole drive, I kept checking my rear-view mirror, half expecting to see Carolyn's car following me, wondering if she had someone watching the house. I felt foolish thinking that way, paranoid, but after what I'd heard on that phone call, I didn't trust my old assumptions anymore. Sandra Chen's office was in a small professional building, tucked between an insurance agency and a dentist. Nothing fancy, but when I walked in, I felt something ease in my chest. The waiting room was comfortable, soft chairs, plants in the windows, and on the wall, frame prints with quotes about dignity and justice and the right to make your own choices. Sandra herself came out to greet me. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 50s. With short silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She shook my hand firmly and led me back to her office. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start wherever feels right." So I did. I told her about Robert, about the farmhouse, about Daniel up in Nashville and Carolyn 45 minutes away. I told her about the fall and the brochures and the questions about selling the land. I told her about the calculations I'd found in Carolyn's handwriting. And I told her about the phone call. "We've already decided. You're moving into assisted living next week." Sandra listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then she said, "How old are you, Martha?" 70. "And your doctor has cleared you as mentally and physically competent?" "Yes, I have the paperwork right here." I pulled the letter from my purse. The one Dr. Holloway had given me after all those tests. I'd made 3 copies. Sandra read it carefully. Then she looked up at me. "Martha, I want you to understand something. What your daughter is trying to do? It's not legal. She can't force you into assisted living. She can't sell your property. She can't make decisions about your life without your consent, not unless a court has declared you incapacitated. And based on this letter, that's not going to happen." I felt tears well up in my eyes. "So she can't just take it from me?" "No, she can't." Sandra leaned forward. "But that doesn't mean she won't try. People in desperate situations sometimes do desperate things, and from what you've told me, it sounds like your daughter and her husband may be in financial trouble." I nodded. Her husband lost his job over a year ago. I offered to help, but she said they were fine. "They may not be fine. And your 3 acres of land in a developing area?" Sandra paused. "That's worth a lot of money to the right buyer." The room felt colder suddenly. "What do I do?" I asked. Sandra pulled out a legal pad and began to write. "First, we're going to protect you. I'm going to help you set up a revocable living trust that puts all your assets, the house, the land, everything, under your control. We'll make it very clear that no one can override your decisions without documented medical evidence of incapacity. She kept writing. Second, we're going to change your power of attorney. Right now, who has it? I felt my stomach drop. Carolyn. Sandra nodded slowly. We're going to change that. Is there someone you trust? A friend? A sibling? I thought of my oldest friend, Margaret Beale. We'd known each other since high school. She'd held my hand at Robert's funeral and called me every Sunday just to check in. Margaret, I said. I trust her completely. Good. We'll name her as your agent. We'll also update your healthcare directive so your wishes are crystal clear. She looked at me steadily. Martha, I want you to understand something else. What I'm doing here isn't aggressive. It's protective. You have every right to live in your home, make your own decisions, and control your own property. I'm just making sure that right is documented and defended. I nodded, but something was still nagging at me. What about my son? I asked. Daniel? Carolyn told me they both agreed I should move, that they discussed it together. Sandra's expression was careful. Have you talked to Daniel yourself? No, not yet. I think you should. That night, I called my son. It was almost 8 o'clock. I could hear the noise of his household in the background, his wife laughing at something, one of the boys playing video games in the other room. Hey, Mama, Daniel said when he picked up. Everything okay? I wanted to cry at the sound of his voice, my sweet boy. He still called me Mama after all these years. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. What's going on? I took a deep breath. Carolyn called me yesterday. She said you both agreed that I should move into assisted living, that you discussed it as a family. There was a long pause. She said, what? Something in his tone made my heart start to pound. She said you agreed, that it was decided, that you were driving down this weekend to help pack up my things. Mama? Daniel's voice was tight now. I never agreed to anything like that. Carolyn called me a few weeks ago, said your doctor had expressed concerns about cognitive decline, said you'd been found wandering the property disoriented, that you'd stopped paying your bills. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. None of that is true, Daniel. What do you mean? I saw my doctor 3 weeks ago. I had every test done, blood work, cognitive assessments, everything. She said I'm in remarkable health, stronger than most patients 20 years younger. Another pause, longer this time. She told me your doctor was worried, Daniel said slowly. She told me you were forgetting things, leaving the stove on, getting lost in your own garden. I've never done any of those things. Mama, his voice cracked. She lied to me. I closed my eyes. There it was, the truth I'd been afraid to face. My daughter had lied, systematically, deliberately, to her own brother, about her own mother. And she'd almost succeeded. Have you ever had a moment when the world just shifts? When everything you thought you knew rearranges itself into a different picture entirely? That's how I felt sitting in my kitchen that night, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my son apologize for believing his sister's lies. I should have called you directly, Daniel kept saying. I should have asked you myself. I'm so sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. You didn't know, I told him. She was convincing. She had details. Why would you question her? But even as I said it, a part of me grieved, for the family I thought we were, for the daughter I thought I'd raised, for the trust that was now shattered beyond repair. Daniel and I talked for a long time that night. I told him about Sandra Chen, about the legal protections I was putting in place. He offered to drive down that weekend, for real this time, to help me with whatever I needed. I won't let her do this to you, he said. I promise. When I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet around me, the same creaks and settlings I'd known for 47 years, the same shadows on the walls, the same view of the garden through the window. But nothing felt the same anymore. If you're still here with me, I want to say thank you. This is hard to talk about, even now, but I believe sharing our stories matters. I believe that somewhere out there, there's a woman listening to this who recognizes something in what I'm saying. Maybe her own child has started acting differently. Maybe someone is pushing her toward decisions she doesn't want to make. Maybe her gut is telling her something that her heart doesn't want to believe. If that's you, trust yourself. Your instincts are there for a reason, and you don't have to face it alone. If you're finding comfort in this story, please subscribe to Jessica Stories Vault. Hit that notification bell so you know when the next part comes out. And stay with me, because what I discovered next changed everything. 2 days after I talked to Daniel, my neighbor Eleanor stopped by. Eleanor Givens has lived on a property next to mine for 30 years. We're not close exactly, but we're friendly. The kind of neighbors who wave from our porches and share vegetables from our gardens in summer. She was carrying a basket of tomatoes when she knocked on my door. "Just picked these this morning," she said, handing them over. "Thought you might like some for supper." I invited her in for coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, chatting about the weather and her grandchildren visiting next month. Then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "By the way," Eleanor said, "I saw a real estate agent's car parked at the end of your driveway last week. A man got out and walked the whole perimeter of your property, taking photographs." I set down my coffee cup very carefully. I didn't authorize anyone to do that. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "I assumed you knew. He was very thorough, spent almost an hour. I thought maybe you were thinking of selling a parcel?" "No," I said, "I'm not." That night, after Eleanor left, I made some phone calls. It didn't take long to find out the truth. Carolyn and Greg had contacted a developer who was buying up rural properties in our area for a new subdivision. They'd had multiple conversations about my land, my 3 acres, my home. And they hadn't said a word to me, because they needed me out of the way first. I want to ask you something. If you were in my place at this moment, what would you do? Would you confront your daughter right away? Would you wait and gather more evidence? Would you try to understand why she'd become this person? Or would you focus on protecting yourself first? There's no right answer. I know that now. But at the time, sitting in my kitchen with that knowledge burning in my chest, I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. I could pretend I didn't know, keep the peace, let her think her plan was working. Or I could fight. For my home, for my dignity, for the life Robert and I had built together. I looked at the bird feeders through my window, the ones my husband had built with his own hands, and I made my choice. The week that followed was the loneliest of my life, not because I was alone. I'd been alone since Robert passed, and I'd made peace with that. This was different. This was the loneliness of knowing that your own child has become a stranger, of looking at photographs of her as a little girl and wondering when she changed, of grieving someone who's still alive. I moved through my days carefully, deliberately. In the mornings, I tended my garden like always, weeded around the tomato plants, checked on the beans, let the dirt get under my fingernails the way Robert used to. In the afternoons, I sat with Sandra Chen's documents and learned words I'd never needed before. Revocable trust, durable power of attorney, healthcare directive, capacity evaluation. I'd lived 70 years without knowing any of this. Now it felt like my survival depended on understanding every line. Sandra called me on Wednesday with an update. "The trust is ready," she said. "Everything you own, the house, the land, your savings, it's all protected now. No one can touch it without your explicit consent." "What if something happens to me?" I asked. "What if I really do get sick someday?" "Then the trust has provisions. You've named Margaret as your successor trustee. She'll manage things according to your wishes. But Martha," Sandra paused, "you'd have to be genuinely incapacitated. A court would have to declare it based on medical evidence. Your daughter can't just decide." I felt something loosen in my chest. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Sandra replied. "We still need to see how Saturday goes." Saturday, the day Carolyn had said she'd come to pack up my things. The day Daniel was supposed to drive down from Nashville, according to the lie she'd told me. Now Daniel really was coming, and Sandra had suggested something that made me nervous. "Let them come," she'd said. "Let them walk in expecting a helpless old woman, and then show them who you really are." I spent the rest of the week getting ready. I cleaned the house from top to bottom. Not because I was expecting guests exactly, but because I needed something to do with my hands. something to keep my mind from spiraling. I found things I hadn't looked at in years. Robert's old flannel shirt, still hanging in the closet. A box of Carolyn's childhood drawings, tucked away in the spare room. A photograph of all four of us at the county fair when the kids were small. Daniel with cotton candy all over his face, Carolyn on Robert's shoulders, me laughing at something off camera. I sat on the bed and cried for a while, holding that photograph. Then I put it back in the box and kept cleaning. By Friday night, everything was in order. The legal documents were stacked neatly on the kitchen table. My medical clearance from Dr. Holloway was on top, along with a letter she'd written specifically for this situation. One that stated clearly, in professional language, that I showed no signs of cognitive decline and was fully capable of making my own decisions. I'd even put fresh flowers in a vase on the counter, yellow roses. Robert used to bring them to me on our anniversary. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I wanted the house to look loved. Maybe I wanted Carolyn to see what she was trying to take from me. Maybe I just needed the reminder that beauty still existed, even in the middle of ugliness. Saturday morning came bright and clear. May in Tennessee is beautiful. The dogwoods were blooming, and the air smelt like honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. I sat on my porch with my coffee and watched the sun climb over the tree line, the same way I'd done every morning for decades. Daniel arrived first, just after 9. He pulled into the driveway in his old pickup truck, and when he got out, I saw immediately that he'd been carrying this weight with him. His shoulders were tense, his jaw was tight. He looked like a man preparing for battle. But when he saw me on the porch, his face softened. "Mama," he said, climbing the steps and pulling me into a hug. I held on to him for a long moment. My boy. 44 years old now, with gray at his temples and teenage sons of his own, but still my boy. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I should have been here sooner." He pulled back and looked at me. "I'm so sorry I believed her." "You didn't have any reason not to. That's what family is supposed to mean." He shook his head. "It still doesn't excuse it. I should have called you. I should have asked." "You're here now. That's what matters." We went inside. I showed him the documents Sandra had prepared. He read through them carefully, asking questions, nodding. When he got to the part about the power of attorney, he looked up. "You named Margaret instead of Carolyn, yes." He was quiet for a moment. "Does Carolyn know about any of this?" "No. She's going to find out today." Sandra arrived at 10:30. She was dressed professionally, dark blazer, simple jewelry, but her manner was warm. She shook Daniel's hand, thanked him for coming, and then sat down at the kitchen table with us. "I want to go over how this might go," she said. "Your daughter is expecting to walk in and find a confused, elderly woman ready to be packed up and shipped off. She's not expecting resistance. She's definitely not expecting legal representation." I nodded. "What do I do?" "Stay calm. Let her talk first. Let her show her hand. And then..." Sandra slid a folder across the table to me. "You show her yours." Inside the folder was everything. The trust documents, the power of attorney, the healthcare directive, the letter from Dr. Holloway, and one more thing, something Sandra had added without telling me. A printout of an email. I looked at it and felt my heart drop. It was a message from Carolyn to a real estate developer, dated 3 weeks ago. Subject line, property inquiry, 3 acres, unimproved. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "I have contacts," Sandra said simply. "The developer's assistant is a former client. When I explained the situation, she was sympathetic." I read the email slowly. Carolyn had described the property in detail. She'd estimated the value. She'd mentioned that the current resident would be relocated within the month. The current resident, not my mother, not the woman who raised me. The current resident. Like I was just an obstacle, a problem to be solved. I set the paper down. My hands were shaking. "This is enough," Sandra said gently. "If she tries anything, if she pushes back, we have proof of her intentions. This isn't about concern for your well-being. This is about money." Daniel reached over and put his hand on mine. "We're ready, Mama." Carolyn and Greg arrived just after noon. I heard the car in the driveway before I saw it. That familiar engine sound. The slam of 2 doors, then voices. Carolyn's first, sharp and impatient. Let's just get this over with. And Greg's, lower, mumbling something I couldn't make out. Footsteps on the porch. The front door opened. And there was my daughter, standing in my entryway with cardboard boxes in her arms and her husband behind her carrying packing tape. She was already talking before she even looked at me. Mom, we're going to start with the bedroom, okay? Just the essentials. The movers will come Monday for the furniture and… She stopped. She saw Daniel. She saw Sandra. She saw me, sitting calmly at the kitchen table with a stack of documents in front of me. The color drained from her face. What is this? I let the silence hang for a moment. There's power in silence. I'd learned that from Robert. He used to say that the person who speaks first in a negotiation usually loses. I wasn't negotiating, but I wasn't going to be the first to blink either. Greg shifted uncomfortably behind Carolyn, still holding the packing tape like he wasn't sure what to do with it. Daniel stood by the window, arms crossed, watching his sister with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Cold, disappointed, hurt. Finally, Sandra spoke. "Please, sit down," she said, gesturing to the empty chairs at the table. "We have some things to discuss." Carolyn's eyes darted from me to Sandra to Daniel and back again. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to regain control. "Who are you?" she demanded, looking at Sandra. "I'm your mother's attorney." The words landed like a slap. Carolyn turned to me. "You got a lawyer?" "Mom, this is ridiculous. We're trying to help you. We're worried about you. Dr. Holloway said I'm in remarkable health," I interrupted quietly. "She said there's no medical reason I can't live independently for many more years." I slid the letter across the table. "That's dated 3 weeks ago. Full cognitive assessment, blood work, physical examination, all clear." Carolyn didn't touch the letter. She just stared at it. "I don't understand," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. "You fell. You hurt yourself. You've been confused." I bruised my hip. It healed. I have never been confused. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. "And you told your brother that I was wandering disoriented, that I'd stopped paying my bills, that my doctor was concerned about my cognitive decline." Daniel stepped forward. "None of it was true, Carolyn. I called Mama directly. She showed me her bank statements. She showed me the medical reports. Everything you told me was a lie." Carolyn's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, she looked like the little girl I remembered, the one who used to climb into my lap when she was scared, the one who cried for days when her goldfish died, the one I'd rocked to sleep and read bedtime stories to and loved with every fiber of my being. Then her expression hardened. "This is insane," she said. "You're turning my family against me. You're listening to some lawyer instead of your own daughter." "Your mother is listening to the truth," Sandra said calmly, "and the truth is documented." She pulled out the final piece of paper, the email. "Is this your email address?" Sandra asked, sliding it toward Carolyn. The room went absolutely still. Carolyn looked at the printout. I watched her face go from pale to red. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "That's not really the question, is it?" Sandra replied. "The question is, why were you contacting a real estate developer about your mother's property 3 weeks before trying to move her into assisted living?" Greg made a small sound, something between a cough and a groan. He set down the packing tape and took a step back, like he wanted to disappear through the wall. Carolyn's hands were trembling. "I was just exploring options," she said. "For when she… eventually…" "The email says the current resident would be relocated within a month," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, distant, like I was reading someone else's lines. "You didn't even use my name." Tears sprang to Carolyn's eyes. "Mom, I wasn't a person to you anymore," I continued. "I was an obstacle, something standing between you and money." "That's not true." "Was it the job?" I asked. "Greg losing his job?" "I offered to help. I told you to tell me if things got hard. You said you were fine." Carolyn was crying now, real tears. I could see the shame beneath the anger, and God help me, a part of me still wanted to comfort her. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Here's what's going to happen, Sandra said, taking control of the room. Martha has established a revocable living trust that protects all of her assets. The power of attorney has been reassigned. Her healthcare directive is updated and specific. No one, not Carolyn, not Daniel, not anyone, can make decisions about her life, her health, or her property without documented proof of incapacity. She looked directly at Carolyn. There will be no forced relocation. There will be no sale of this property. There will be no more lies told to family members about Martha's mental state. If any of those things happen, I will take legal action. Do you understand? Carolyn said nothing. Do you understand? Sandra repeated. Yes, Carolyn whispered. Good. Sandra gathered her papers. I think we're done here. The next few minutes were a blur. Greg muttered something about needing air and practically fled out the front door. Carolyn stood frozen in the middle of my kitchen, tears streaming down her face, looking at me like she was waiting for me to say something, to forgive her, to make it better. But I couldn't. Not because I was angry. The anger had burned out somewhere in the past hour. What I felt now was something worse. Grief. Exhaustion. A bone-deep sadness that I knew would take a long time to heal. I stood up slowly and walked toward her. I love you, I said. I have always loved you. You are my daughter, and that doesn't change. She started to reach for me, but I held up my hand. But I will not be lied about. I will not be pushed aside. And I will not lose my home because you and Greg are in trouble. If you had asked me for help, honest help, I would have given it. You know I would have. Carolyn's face crumpled. Instead, you tried to take everything from me. You told lies. You made plans behind my back. You looked at me and saw, what? An obstacle? A paycheck? Mom, I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry now, I said quietly. But sorry doesn't fix this. This is going to take a very long time, maybe longer than we have. I walked past her to the front door and held it open. I think you should go. She left without another word. I stood on my porch and watched her car disappear down the driveway. Daniel came up behind me and put his hand on my shoulder. You did good, Mama. I didn't feel like I'd done good. I felt like something inside me had broken, but I also felt something else. Free. For the first time in months, I could breathe. That night, after Daniel and Sandra had both gone, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea. The goldfinches were still there. Robert's bird feeders were still standing. The garden was still growing. Everything looked the same as it had before, but I was different. I'd learned something about myself that day, about my own strength, about my ability to stand up for what mattered. And I'd learned something about family too. Something painful but necessary. Love doesn't mean letting people destroy you. And protecting yourself isn't the same as closing your heart. If you've made it this far with me, I want you to know. It gets better. Not right away, not easily, but eventually. Stay with me. I'll tell you what happened in the weeks that followed. How Carolyn and I slowly, painfully, began to rebuild something from the ashes. And if you're still here, if this story has touched something in you, please subscribe to Jessica Stories Vault. Hit the like button, leave me a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support means more than you know. Because none of us should have to face these battles alone. The house felt different after they left. Not emptier. I'd been alone here for 11 years since Robert passed, and I'd grown comfortable with the silence. This was something else. The air felt lighter, somehow. Like a storm had passed through and cleared away something heavy that had been building for months without me fully realizing it. I spent the rest of that Saturday doing ordinary things. I watered the garden. I made myself a simple dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, the way Robert used to make it on Sunday mornings. I sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the fields, the sky turning pink and orange and deep purple. And I let myself feel everything. The sadness, the relief, the strange combination of victory and loss. Because here's the truth nobody tells you about standing up for yourself. Even when you win, even when you do the right thing, it still hurts. You still grieve what you lost. You still wonder if there was another way. But wondering doesn't change what had to be done. Daniel called me before he headed back to Nashville the next morning. "How are you doing, Mama?" he asked. "I'm all right," I said, and I meant it. Tired, but all right. "I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" Those words broke something open in my chest. I had to sit down. "Thank you, sweetheart." "I mean it. What you did yesterday took courage, real courage. Most people would have just let it happen, let themselves be pushed around because it was easier than fighting." "I almost did," I admitted. "If it hadn't been for Dr. Holloway, for Sandra, I might have." "But you didn't. That's what matters." He paused. "What are you going to do about Carolyn?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since the moment she walked out my door. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "I need time. She needs time. We both need to figure out who we are now." "Do you think you'll forgive her?" I looked out the window at Robert's bird feeders, swaying gently in the morning breeze. "Eventually," I said. "Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, and it's not the same as letting her back in like nothing happened. But she's still my daughter. That doesn't just disappear." "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, baby." The next few weeks were quiet. I fell back into my routines: garden in the morning, light housework, lunch on the porch, afternoons reading or working on a quilt I'd started months ago and never finished, evenings with the birds and the sunset. Margaret came by twice a week to check on me. She'd been shocked when I told her what happened, shocked and furious on my behalf. "That girl," she'd said, shaking her head. "What was she thinking?" "She was thinking about money," I'd replied. "And fear. Fear makes people do terrible things." Margaret had looked at me for a long moment. "You're more gracious than I'd be." Maybe. Or maybe I was just too tired to hold on to anger. Sandra called to check in regularly. She wanted to make sure Carolyn hadn't tried anything else, hadn't contacted me, hadn't pushed back in any way. "She hasn't," I told her. "It's been completely silent." "That might not last," Sandra warned. "Sometimes people back off to regroup. Sometimes they come back with a different strategy. And sometimes they just leave," I said. "Sometimes the silence is permanent." "Would that be okay with you?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I admitted. "It wouldn't. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the manipulation and the betrayal, she was still my daughter. I'd carried her in my body. I'd walked the floor with her when she was colicky as a baby. I'd taught her to read and to ride a bike and to be kind to people. Somewhere inside the woman who tried to take my home was the little girl I'd loved with my whole heart. I had to believe she was still in there." 3 weeks after that confrontation in my kitchen, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, Carolyn's handwriting. No return address, but I recognized the stationery, cream-colored paper with a thin border, the kind she'd always use for thank you notes. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, just looking at it. Then I opened it. "Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should. But I need to say some things, even if you never respond. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did. But I need you to know that I am drowning in shame right now. I can barely look at myself in the mirror. Greg lost his job almost 2 years ago. I didn't tell you because I was embarrassed. Because I was supposed to have everything together. Because you raised me to be strong and independent, and I felt like I was failing. The bills started piling up. We refinanced the house, but it wasn't enough. We were about to lose everything. And I looked at your 3 acres and I thought, that's the answer. That's how we save ourselves. I told myself I was doing it for the right reasons. That you'd be safer in assisted living. That you'd be happier with people around all the time. That you were getting older and it was just a matter of time anyway. But those were lies I told myself because the truth was too ugly. The truth was that I was willing to sacrifice your happiness, your dignity, your home for money, for my own financial survival. I became someone I don't recognize. Daniel won't speak to me. Greg and I are in counseling. I started seeing a therapist on my own to try to understand how I became this person. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to let me back into your life. But I needed you to know that I see what I did. I see how wrong it was. You deserved so much better. From me, from your own daughter. I love you. I have always loved you. And I'm so, so sorry. Carolyn. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer where I kept important papers. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready. But I kept the letter. Have you ever had to decide whether to let someone back into your life after they hurt you? It's one of the hardest decisions in the world. Because there's no clear right answer, no guidebook, no way to know for sure if you're being wise or just setting yourself up to be hurt again. I thought about it constantly over the next few days. I prayed about it. I talked to Margaret about it. I even called Daniel and asked him what he thought. "That's not my decision to make, Mama," he said. "She's my sister and I love her, but she hurt you. You're the only one who can decide if you're willing to try again." He was right. This was mine to carry. A week after I got the letter, I sat down and wrote one back. Carolyn, I read your letter. Thank you for being honest. I believe you're sorry. I believe you're struggling with what you did. And I believe that you love me. But love without respect is hollow. Love without trust is fragile. You broke something between us that can't be fixed quickly. Maybe it can't be fixed at all. I don't know yet. What I do know is this. I'm not ready to see you. I'm not ready to have you in my home or in my life the way things used to be. That door is closed right now. But it's not locked. If you want to rebuild trust, it will take time. It will take honesty. It will take you showing me, through actions, not words, that you see me as a person, not a problem. As your mother, not an obstacle. I need space right now. I need time to heal. I need to know that when I do open that door again, you won't try to take advantage of my forgiveness. You're my daughter. That doesn't change. But our relationship has to change. It has to be built on something stronger than what it was. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. Until then, take care of yourself. Get the help you need. Do the work. I hope someday we can find our way back to each other, Mom. I mailed it the next day, and then I waited. If you're still with me, thank you. I know this part of the story isn't as dramatic as what came before. There's no big confrontation, no shocking reveal. Just the slow, painful work of figuring out what comes next. But I think this part matters just as much. Because healing isn't loud. It's not a single moment. It's 1,000 small decisions to keep going, to stay open, to protect yourself while still leaving room for hope. If you've ever been in this position, if you've ever had to decide whether to forgive someone who hurt you deeply, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. What did you choose? How did it turn out? And if this story is helping you feel less alone, please hit that subscribe button. Stay with me for the next chapter, where I'll tell you what happened when Carolyn and I finally spoke again. You're not walking this road alone. None of us are. I heard from Carolyn again 6 weeks later. Not a letter this time. A phone call. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting on the porch shelling peas from the garden when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer when I saw her name on the screen. But something made me pick up. Hello? Mom? Her voice was small. Uncertain. Is this an okay time? I looked out at the garden, at the beans climbing their poles, at the tomatoes heavy on the vine. Yes, I said. It's okay. We talked for 20 minutes. Not about the past. Not about what she'd done. Just small things. She told me about her daughters, my granddaughters. About how they were doing in school. About a project one of them was working on. I told her about the garden. About the goldfinches that still came to Robert's feeders every morning. It was careful. Tentative. Like 2 strangers trying to find common ground. But it was a start. When we hung up, I sat very still for a long time. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a single decision. Maybe it was something you practiced. Something you chose again and again, slowly, carefully, one small conversation at a time. Maybe it was something you grew, like a garden. And maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for us yet. Summer settled over the farmhouse like a warm blanket. The garden exploded with life. Tomatoes, cucumbers, green beans, peppers. More than I could eat on my own. More than I could give away to Eleanor and the other neighbors. The kind of abundance Robert used to love. I found myself thinking about him more during those weeks. Not with the sharp grief of the early years, but with a gentle ache. A wish that he was here to see how I'd stood my ground. A wish that he could tell me if I was doing the right thing with Carolyn. But Robert wasn't here, and this decision was mine to make. Carolyn and I spoke on the phone every Tuesday afternoon. It became a routine. She'd call around 3 o'clock and we'd talk for 15 or 20 minutes. Never longer, never about anything too heavy. She told me she and Greg had found a financial counselor. That Greg had gotten a new job, not as good as the old one, but steady. That they'd downsized to a smaller house they could actually afford. We should have done it a year ago, she admitted during one call. We were trying to keep up appearances, trying to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. Pride is expensive, I said quietly. Yeah, a long pause. It really is. She never asked to visit, never pushed for more than I was offering, and I appreciated that more than I could say. It meant she was listening, learning, respecting my boundaries instead of trying to steamroll over them. It meant there might be hope. Daniel came to visit in late July with his whole family. His wife Lisa helped me make a big Sunday dinner: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans from the garden, biscuits. His boys, my grandsons, had grown so much since I'd seen them last. Tall and gangly, with Robert's dark hair and my eyes. We ate on the porch, talking and laughing, and for a few hours everything felt normal, easy, the way family is supposed to feel. After dinner, while Lisa and the boys were walking down to see the creek, Daniel sat with me on the porch swing. "Have you talked to Carolyn?" he asked. "Every Tuesday." He nodded. "She called me last week, asked if I'd forgive her." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I was working on it." He looked at me. "I'm not as generous as you, Mama. I'm still angry." "That's okay. You're allowed to be." "She hurt you. She lied to me. She tried to..." He shook his head. "I don't know if I can just let that go." "I'm not asking you to let it go," I said. "I'm just asking you to leave the door open, even if it's just a crack." He was quiet for a long moment. "Do you think she's really changed?" he finally asked. I thought about our phone calls, about the careful way Carolyn spoke now, about how she never made excuses, never tried to minimize what she'd done. "I think she's trying," I said. "That's all any of us can do." In August, something shifted. Carolyn called on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. I almost didn't pick up, thrown by the change in routine. "Mom?" She sounded nervous. "I know it's not our usual day. I wanted to ask you something." "Okay. The girls have been asking about you. They want to see you, and She took a shaky breath. "I was wondering if maybe we could visit, just for an hour, just to see you." My heart started pounding. This was the moment I'd been both dreading and hoping for. The moment when we'd have to face each other again. When I'd have to look my daughter in the eye and decide if I truly believed she'd changed. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course, take all the time you need." We hung up and I sat very still. Then I called Margaret. "What do you think?" I asked after explaining the situation. "What do you think?" she countered. "I don't know. Part of me wants to see them. Part of me is terrified." "Of what?" I had to think about that. Of being disappointed, of letting them in and discovering that nothing's really changed, that she's just better at hiding it. "That's fair," Margaret said. "But here's what I know about you. You're not stupid. You're not naive. You proved that when you stood up to her the first time. If she tries to manipulate you again, you'll see it." She was right. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to pay attention to that knot in my stomach, that whisper of warning. I wouldn't ignore it again. "Invite them," Margaret said, "but keep it short. Keep it public. Maybe meet at a park or a restaurant instead of at your house. Smart. Neutral territory. I called Carolyn back that evening. You can come, I said, but not here. Let's meet at Foster Park on Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. Just you and the girls. Not Greg? Not yet, one step at a time. Okay. Her voice was thick with emotion. Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. I barely slept Friday night. I kept playing out scenarios in my head. What I'd say, how I'd react if she tried to justify what she'd done, how I'd handle seeing my granddaughters after all this time. Those girls, 8 and 11 now. They hadn't done anything wrong. They didn't deserve to lose their grandmother because of their mother's choices. Saturday morning came too fast. I got dressed carefully. Nothing fancy, just a simple blouse and slacks. I wanted to look put together, strong, not like a fragile old woman who needed taking care of. I drove to Foster Park 20 minutes early and sat in my car, watching families arrive. Kids on the playground, couples walking dogs, normal Saturday morning life. At exactly 10 o'clock, I saw Carolyn's car pull into the parking lot. My heart jumped into my throat. The girls got out first, my beautiful granddaughters, taller than I remembered. And then Carolyn. She looked thinner, tired, older than she had just a few months ago. Our eyes met across the parking lot, and I saw something in her face that I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. She was afraid. Of me. Of my rejection. Of the possibility that I'd never forgive her. Good, a small part of me thought. She should be afraid. She should understand what she almost lost. But a bigger part, the part that had spent 23 hours in labor bringing her into this world, the part that had rocked her through nightmares and nursed her through chickenpox and taught her to read, that part just wanted to hold her. I got out of my car. The girls ran to me first. "Grandma!" They squealed, throwing their arms around me. I held them tight, breathing in the smell of their shampoo, feeling their warmth against me. "Oh, my sweet girls," I whispered. "I've missed you so much." When they pulled back, I finally looked at Carolyn. She was standing a few feet away, hands clasped in front of her, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Hi, baby." We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then she said, "Can I hug you?" And despite everything, despite the hurt and the betrayal and the months of silence, I nodded. She came to me slowly, carefully, like she was approaching something fragile. When she put her arms around me, I felt her shaking. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said, and I did. We walked through the park together, the girls running ahead to the playground while Carolyn and I followed slowly. "How are you?" I asked. "Better. Worse. Both." She looked at me. "Therapy is hard. Really hard. I'm having to face a lot of things I didn't want to look at." "Like what?" "Like how much of my identity was tied to money, to appearances, to what other people thought of us." She swallowed hard. "And how willing I was to sacrifice the people I loved to maintain that image." We sat down on a bench where we could watch the girls play. "I thought I was protecting them," Carolyn continued. "My daughters. I thought, if I could just get us financially stable again, everything would be okay. But I was teaching them terrible lessons. That money matters more than integrity. That it's okay to hurt people if you're desperate enough." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm trying to teach them different lessons. That sometimes you lose things. That sometimes you have to start over. That your worth isn't determined by how big your house is." I watched her profile. The daughter I'd raised was still in there. I could see her now, emerging from the fear and desperation that had consumed her. "The girls asked why we don't see you anymore," Carolyn said quietly. I told them the truth. Age-appropriate version, but the truth. That I hurt you. That I made bad choices. That you needed space to heal. What did they say? Emma, my oldest, asked if you were going to forgive me. Carolyn's voice broke. I told her I didn't know. That forgiveness is complicated. That love doesn't mean you have to let people hurt you. Smart girl. She gets that from you. We sat in silence for a while, watching the girls swing higher and higher, their laughter carrying across the playground. I don't know if we can go back to how things were, I finally said. I don't know if I want to. Carolyn nodded. I understand. But maybe we can build something new, something better, something based on honesty instead of assumptions. She looked at me with hope in her eyes. I'd like that. It's going to take time and boundaries, real boundaries that you have to respect. I will, I promise. And if you ever lie to me again, if you try to manipulate me or make decisions for me or treat me like I'm incompetent, I turned to face her fully. I will walk away and I won't come back. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really understand. I love you. You're my daughter. But I won't sacrifice my dignity, my home, or my peace of mind. Not for anyone. Not even you. I understand, she said again, and this time I believed her. We stayed at the park for 2 hours. The girls showed me how high they could swing, how fast they could run, the new tricks they'd learned on the monkey bars. We had a picnic lunch Carolyn had packed, sandwiches and fruit and cookies she'd baked herself. The girls helped, she said, watching me bite into a slightly lopsided chocolate chip cookie. They're not perfect, but we made them together. They're delicious, I said, and they were. Not because they were perfectly baked, but because they represented something new. A mother teaching her daughters to create instead of consume, to value time together over store-bought perfection. When it was time to leave, the girls hugged me tight. Can we come visit again, Grandma? Emma asked. I looked at Carolyn. She was watching me carefully, not pushing, just waiting. Yes, I said, we can do this again. The relief on Carolyn's face was palpable. That night, I sat on my porch and thought about the day. It hadn't been perfect. There were still walls between us, still hurts that needed healing, still trust that needed rebuilding. But it was a start. And sometimes, a start is enough. If you've been hurt by family, if you're trying to figure out whether to let someone back in, I want you to know something. You get to decide. Not them. Not anyone else who tells you that family is family, or that you should just forgive and forget. You get to set the terms. You get to protect yourself. You get to take all the time you need. And if you decide to open that door again, even just a crack, that's not weakness. That's courage. Stay with me for one more chapter. I want to tell you where we are now and what I've learned from all of this. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave me a comment about your own journey with forgiveness, the messy, complicated reality of it. Because the truth is, healing isn't a straight line. It's a winding road with setbacks and breakthroughs and moments when you're not sure you're going the right way. But you keep walking. And eventually, you find your way home. It's been a year now since that confrontation in my kitchen. A full year since my daughter tried to take my home and I learned to fight back. Since I discovered that love without boundaries is just another word for self-destruction. Since I realized that the person I needed to protect most was myself. I'm sitting on my porch as I tell you this. It's early September, and the morning air has just the slightest hint of fall in it. The goldfinches are at Robert's feeders. The garden is winding down for the season, and I'm sipping my coffee from the same mug I've used for 20 years, chipped on the handle, faded from thousands of washings, but still mine, still here, just like me. Let me tell you where we are now. Carolyn and I have rebuilt something. Not what we had before, that's gone, and honestly, it needed to be. What we had before was based on unspoken expectations and unexamined dynamics. Me always giving, her always taking. Me always accommodating, her always assuming. What we have now is different. We see each other once a month, sometimes at my house, sometimes at hers, sometimes at a neutral location like that park. We talk on the phone every other week. The girls come to visit, and I'm teaching them to garden the way I taught their mother all those years ago. There are still moments of awkwardness, still conversations that hit a nerve, still days when I wonder if I'm being too forgiving or not forgiving enough. But there's also laughter, shared recipes, stories about the girls. Slow, careful steps towards something that feels like family again. Carolyn is different now. I can see it in the way she listens instead of assuming, the way she asks instead of deciding, the way she respects my no without pushing back. She's in therapy every week. She and Greg are still in couples counseling. They sold their too-big house and moved into something smaller, something they can actually afford. She got a part-time job at the library, not for the money, she told me, but for the purpose, for something that's hers. I lost myself, she told me during one of our visits. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being a person and started being a role. A wife, a mother, someone who had to appear successful at all costs. I forgot who I was underneath all of that. I understood that better than she knew, because I'd been on my own journey of rediscovery this year, learning who I was beyond wife, beyond mother, learning that I was still a whole person with wants and needs and boundaries that deserved respect. Daniel and Carolyn are slowly repairing their relationship too. It's been harder for him. He took her betrayal personally in a way I didn't, or maybe just differently. She'd lied directly to him, manipulated him, used his concern for me as a weapon. But they're talking now, carefully, with lots of space between conversations. He's not ready to spend holidays together yet, and I respect that. Everyone heals at their own pace. I just need to know she's really changed, he told me during his last visit. Not just sorry she got caught, not just putting on a show. Really, fundamentally changed. Give it time, I said. You'll see. And I believe he will, because the change in Carolyn isn't surface level. It's bone deep. The kind of change that only comes from truly facing yourself and not liking what you see. The kind of change that's real. As for me, I'm still here in my yellow farmhouse. The legal protections Sandra helped me put in place are still active. The revocable trust, the power of attorney with Margaret as my agent, the healthcare directive that makes my wishes crystal clear. I hope I never need them again. I hope my children will respect my autonomy from here on out. But if they don't, I'm prepared. Because I learned something crucial this year. Hope is not a strategy. Love is not enough if it's not paired with respect. And protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. I still tend my garden, still feed Robert's birds every morning, still sit on this porch and watch the sunrise the same way I have for 47 years. But I also do new things now. I joined a book club at the library. I started volunteering at the senior center, not as a resident, but as someone who teaches quilting to others. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. I'm building a life that doesn't revolve around waiting for my children to visit. A life that's full and rich and mine. And it feels good. The visual anchor of this whole story, those glossy assisted living brochures Carolyn brought to my house. I kept them, not as a reminder of the betrayal, but as a reminder of my own strength. They're in a drawer in my kitchen, underneath the good tablecloths I only use for holidays. Sometimes I pull them out and look at them, at the smiling elderly people on the covers, at the promises of worry-free living and community. There's nothing wrong with assisted living, I know that. Someday I might even choose it for myself, when I'm ready, on my terms. But it will be my choice, not because someone decided I was inconvenient, not because someone wanted my land, not because I was too scared or too tired to stand up for myself. My choice, that's what matters. There's something I want to say to those of you who are watching this and seeing yourself in my story. Maybe you're dealing with an adult child who's overstepping. Maybe you're facing a family member who's making decisions for you without asking. Maybe someone is trying to convince you that you're not capable anymore, that you need to give up your independence, that you're the problem. Listen to me. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone's concern feels more like control, pay attention to that. If you're being told you're confused or declining, but deep down you know you're not, get a second opinion. Get documentation. Get proof. You are not crazy. You are not being difficult. You are not the problem. Your instincts are there for a reason. Your boundaries matter. Your right to make decisions about your own life doesn't expire when you reach a certain age. And if you have to fight, legally, emotionally, with every ounce of strength you have to protect that right, then fight. You are worth fighting for. I also want to say something about forgiveness. Because I know some of you might be thinking I forgave Carolyn too easily, that I should have cut her off completely, that what she did was unforgivable. And maybe you're right. Maybe in your situation, the right answer is to walk away and never look back. Only you can make that decision. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about choosing not to carry the poison of bitterness for the rest of your life. It's about opening the door to healing, even if the other person never walks through it. It's about reclaiming your peace. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It doesn't mean letting them back into your life unconditionally. It just means you're not going to let what they did define the rest of your story. For me, forgiving Carolyn, slowly, carefully, with clear boundaries, was the right choice. But it might not be yours, and that's okay. You get to decide what healing looks like for you. As I'm sitting here on my porch, finishing this story, I'm thinking about Robert. About how he used to sit in this exact spot every evening after work, watching the sun go down. About how he'd take my hand and say, "We built something good here, didn't we?" And we did. A home, a family, a life. But what I built this year, the strength to stand up for myself, the wisdom to set boundaries, the courage to protect what matters, that's something I built alone. And I'm proud of it. Robert would be proud too. So here's where we are now, a year later. I'm still in my home, still independent, still making my own decisions. The farmhouse is mine, protected and secure. My relationship with my children is healing, slowly but surely. And I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Not because I didn't break, I did break. Parts of me are still broken. But I also learned how to put myself back together. And the woman who emerged from that breaking is someone I'm proud to be. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who won't be pushed around. Someone who understands that love and boundaries can coexist. Someone who's still here, still standing, still choosing her own path. Before I finish, I want to ask you something. If this story touched your heart, would you give it a like? It helps me know I'm not alone in this, that sharing these hard truths matters. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Jessica's Stories Vault. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Because we're all walking this road together. Women who've been hurt, women who've had to fight, women who are learning to trust themselves again. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What time is it there right now? And if you're comfortable sharing, have you ever had to set a boundary with family? How did it turn out? Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today. Your experience might give someone else the courage to trust their instincts, to stand their ground, to choose themselves. We're not alone in this. None of us are. There's one more thing I want to leave you with. A question I've been asking myself a lot lately. Which part of this story felt closest to your own life? Was it the moment of betrayal? The slow discovery of the truth? The decision to fight back? The complicated work of forgiveness? Think about it, and if you want to share, I'd love to hear. Because our stories matter, our experiences matter, and when we share them, honestly, vulnerably, without shame, we create something powerful. We create connection, understanding, hope. We remind each other that we're not crazy, not alone, not wrong for protecting ourselves. We remind each other that we're worth fighting for. I'm going to finish my coffee now and go check on the garden. Maybe pick the last of the tomatoes before the first frost comes. Maybe sit out here a while longer and watch the birds. Maybe just breathe in this moment, this life I fought to keep, this peace I worked so hard to find. It's not perfect. It's not what I imagined a year ago, but it's mine, and that's everything. Thank you for walking this road with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Until the next story, take care of yourself. Trust your instincts, set your boundaries, and remember, you are worth protecting. You always have been, You always will be.